press so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
The site of Rosewood, Florida is located in Levy County, approximately 9 miles from Cedar Key. Levy County was officially established on March 10, 1845, while Florida itself had only become a state 1 week earlier on March 3, 1845. Prior to this, the area was inhabited by various Native American groups. We know about the Native Americans who lived here from archaeological work, historical documents, and the record of the famous naturalist and explorer William Bartram, who visited the area in 1774. The two primary tribes historically in the area were the Creeks and Seminoles. While the area that would become Levy County remained largely uninhabited during prehistory, we do know that large numbers of Native Americans would have passed through the area regularly, and that some lived in the area full-time. When the United States gained control of Florida in 1821, white settlers increasingly called for the complete removal of the Seminoles, leading to the Seminole Wars. The First Seminole War of 1817 ended 2 years later with the establishment of a reservation to the southeast and outside of Levy County. 13 years later, the Seminoles were ordered to leave this reservation, and the Second Seminole War began in 1835. It was during this time that numerous military forts were constructed in modern-day Levy County, with Cedar Key established as a primary military fort and hospital. When the Second Seminole War concluded in 1842, European settlers finally began to move into Levy County in greater and greater numbers. Levy County is named for David Levy, who built a 5,000-acre sugar plantation along the Homosassa River. David was an important figure in early Florida and son of the largely forgotten Moses Levy. Moses was a devout Jewish abolitionist who advocated freeing the slaves. David Levy changed his name to David Yulee in 1846, mainly to distance himself from his father and their Jewish heritage. Historian C.S. Monaco best captures the differences between father and son in his book, Moses Levy of Florida, Jewish Utopian and Antebellum Reformer. Here's a quote from that work. Moses Levy and David Yulee occupied opposing ends of the philosophical spectrum. Levy was a proto-Zionist, a social activist, and utopian theorist who questioned and rebelled against orthodoxy and the political status quo. His progressive ideas, especially in regards to slavery, were anathema in the South. In comparison, David Yulee disassociated himself from Judaism and yearned not only for the acceptance by the Southern elite, but to become one of their stalwart leaders and defenders. David Yulee is best remembered as the first Jewish senator in America. He was a strong supporter of the Confederacy and advocated for the continuation of slavery. He was also responsible for the Florida Railroad, which began construction in 1853 and finished in 1861. During the Civil War, various stretches of this railroad were destroyed, but it was completely rebuilt following the Civil War and resumed operation in 1866. The railroad linked the Gulf Coast at Cedar Key with the Atlantic Ocean in Fernandina. Initially, many thought that the railroad would bring quick growth and improvement to the areas around Rosewood, and it did for several decades. The area around the site of Rosewood, called the Great Gulf Hammock, is one of the most fertile environments in Florida. The 1871 Florida Gazetteer stated the area was well known throughout the state and was referred to as a standard example of fertility, even giving rise to the saying, as rich as the Great Gulf Hammock. The fertility attracted many industrial and agricultural interests. This included the development of numerous logging camps and even the construction of orange groves. Also, phosphate mining played an increasing role in the late 1800s. During the 1870s and 1880s, a handful of prosperous communities were established along the railroad, and Rosewood was one of the largest and most successful. By the turn of the century, the Great Gulf Hammock supported numerous industries and multi-ethnic towns, including including a sizable Greek sponge fishing community in and around Cedar Key. By the 1880s and 1890s, Rosewood was a busy place, especially for Levy County. A variety of historical documents allow researchers to better understand how this community took shape over these decades. Business directories and state gazetteers provide valuable information. According to the 1886 Florida State Gazetteer, 50 people lived in Rosewood. The town was settled in 1855, and the nearest telegraph station was another 10 miles along the railroad in Cedar Key. It goes on to tell us that milling red cedar lumber is the primary industry, and that there is a hotel, general store, and Episcopal church in town. Additionally, we know that there are at least 2 carpenters, 1 civil engineer, a Methodist pastor, and an Episcopal rector. Other industries in the town include cotton and grain planting, orange growing, and assorted vegetable farming. This one page alone describes a very prosperous and wealthy community in the Great Gulf Hammock. These directories tell us the history of Rosewood from year to year. While directories and gazetteers provide important information, they reveal very little about personal lives in the past. Other datasets and specific research methods provide greater details about the people who lived in Rosewood. One such approach is called documentary archaeology, which represents a unique use of historical materials. This begins with anthropological questions about the lives of people in the past, and then compares a wide range of datasets to answer these questions. These datasets can include property records, census rolls, historic maps, photographs, oral history, and artifacts. One of the primary approaches used for the virtual Rosewood Research Project uses property deeds to recreate the historic property boundaries in and around Rosewood during the late 1800s and early 1900s. Property deeds like these provide important insights about the layout of a community through time. For instance, this property deed describes the location of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Rosewood, built in 1912. Deeds like this one identify 5 separate churches in Rosewood between the years 1878 and 1921. In order to learn even more about this community, census records provide household-level information. Specifically, they record details about a person's age, sex, race, and so forth. For instance, Mary Hall's property and home was located in the northwest part of Rosewood. Her property is highlighted here in light blue. She lives in a house with her 8 children, after her husband and their father had already passed away. We can learn much about Mary Hall's home and her family from the census. Mary Hall, the head of this house, was a black female aged 40. She had 5 sons between the ages of 3 years old and 19. These sons' names were Stephen, Louis, Thomas, Charlie, and Wilson. Mary Hall also had 3 daughters between the ages of 1 and 17. These daughters' names were Docia, Marjorie, and Mary Hall. Census records tell us about other families in Rosewood as well, like the household of Nathan Robinson, who lived in Rosewood with his children, including a daughter named Roby, who was 7 years old in 1923. These data sets allow us to understand how family relationships were interwoven with other aspects of community life. These various data sets are providing researchers with historical and social details about Rosewood. In 1923, Rosewood was a prosperous town. It had many families and established businesses, and was like many other communities you'd find across rural North Florida. By 1923, the fortunes of those living in the Great Gulf Hammock were changing. The entire economy of Florida was changing, and Levy County was no longer as remote as it once seemed. Daily railroad service still came through town, and Rosewood residents continued to live off the land and care for their community. Then, on New Year's Day 1923, this was shattered forever. A white woman in nearby Sumner fabricated a black assailant to hide her extramarital affair with a white man. A white mob quickly formed and headed for Rosewood, encountering the home of Sam Carter, a longtime black resident of Rosewood. At first, they interrogated him by hanging him from a tree by the neck. Then, when it seemed the mob might release him, a man leveled his gun at Carter's face, and New Year's Day ended with the sound of a shotgun blast. At first, it seemed that the violence might end with Carter's murder. However, a little over a day later, whites in Sumner heard that the black assailant, who never existed, had returned to Rosewood with Sylvester Carrier. Carrier's distrust of whites was well known, and before the night was out, at least 2 whites lay dead on his doorstep after attempting to set his house on fire. Rumor and hatred spread quickly through rural Florida, eventually reaching the KKK in Gainesville. Residents of Rosewood knew that the response for killing whites would be swift and violent. Black men armed themselves and headed into the woods. Women and children hid with one of Rosewood's only white residents, John Wright. However, by the 6th of January, 3 other blacks had been brutally murdered, and the white mob, potentially numbering in the hundreds, began the systematic burning of Rosewood. During this time, a train was brought through town at 4 in the morning to pick up women and children, who had moved to the swamps and spent the previous couple of nights hiding after John Wright was unable to guarantee their safety. The train took dozens of families to towns like Otter Creek, Archer, and Gainesville's Black District. Mary Hall Daniels, daughter of Mary Hall, discusses what happened to her after 1923.
So Mr. Wright got the train, and where did the
Yeah, he called for the train to come and pick up, the train, I guess on where it was, out in the woods. So then there was a person, something would see that we get to the train. To get on the train, somebody had to guide us to see me so that we get on the train. But nobody could get on the train but the women and the children. No men could get on the train because you couldn't trust the men, don't know who we were. So all the women and the children got on the train, and then they took us to Gainesville, and I guess some got off in Austria, but I know Gainesville. Because my mother said I know took the train to Gainesville, I know.
Okay, so your family got off in Gainesville.
Mm-hmm. Gainesville, Florida. That was 1923, January the 1st, doing that week.
Yeah, it was during that week. I think it was on the 6th or the 7th. About the 7th, I think, when it got to Gainesville.
Because we was out in the woods
And
about
what
the
month?
week. We was out the
January.
week while we always out there. Because I think Wilson was 7 or 8 years old. Because Wilson is 4 years older than I am. He's the baby boy, and I'm the baby girl. I'm the baby of the family. Because mother said that Wilson, that all of us, sisters and brothers, there was 9 of us. We all were 2 years apart, but Wilson and myself. But my father had died first. But he left all of this, but my mom was in charge of all this land and all this stuff. And all those children there.
When did he die?
That I don't know, when I was a baby. Must have been about a year, must have been my year something old, because I don't remember him. My sister and I had the thrash. And during that time, for somehow, mother chewed the thrash on me, but she couldn't chew it on my sister Martha. And it went through her and peeled her and it killed her. That's what my mother would tell me, because I would ask questions. I don't know, I guess I'm the person that asks questions. So you have to give me if I ask, because I'd ask questions, you know. I'm just like that. I just ask questions, and, you know, maybe sometimes I don't ask the right question, but I ask anyway, you know. And then they either tell me or they don't tell me.
Okay.
You know, so that, I say to people that, I know people wonder sometimes about me, but I don't know, I said, well, maybe, because see, my daddy was from Nigeria, Africa. That's my daddy's home was from Nigeria, Africa.
Yeah, Nigeria.
Nigerian, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, I guess I got this young speech, so if I say something kind of crooked, just straighten it out.
That's all right.
Because in school, my history teacher called me Baby Geese, because I couldn't talk, I was just do. But anyway, I made it. And then my daddy was a minister.
That's
Oh.
right.
Okay. The minister, and he was a farmer.
And he was a 33rd degree Mason.
Most of those men down there were
He
Masons.
was Mason.
That's right.
Mason's not like it was then. And I guess I'm no more like my dad, because I tried everything. And my son at the leader department, I had to join. And I joined till I get up a certain age, and then I came out. Everything but 2. And that's the Stars, Eastern Stars, and the Ladies of Jura of the 32nd degree Golden Circle. I stayed in those two things.
So, so you got to Gainesville, and you know, was your mother? Was she able to buy a house? Did somebody take her in?
No, for some reason, see, my mother had a brother lived in Gainesville, and he ran the fish market.
So, did you move in with him?
No, I don't know where we moved. No, I don't think so. I don't know how we come about this house. I don't know that he got the house. I don't know. All I know that we was living down there. It was by the train shed.
You lived in
We
Gainesville.
was living in Gainesville. We lived down there by the train shed. You know, it used to be a train shed right down there. But that's where we used to live. It's not there anymore. But we used to live down there, and then that's by the ice plant. And used to load the box of ice. And we wanted ice, we would slip up them and get the load of ice, then we would go and get some ice and fill up those ice boxes. I graduated 1940.
Robbie Morton, daughter of Nathaniel Robinson, discusses what happened to her following 1923.
We got off at Chiefland where my sister and them was. And of course we were there about a week, a little better than a week, but my grandmother, they had her with them and she wasn't happy just staying put because her name was Carter, one of the real out names. She didn't know whether somebody was looking for everybody to kill them or not because she had her name was one of the better livers in that town. And my grandmother had, and my grandpa had 80 acres of land. Anyway, she wanted to leave, so they packed up the old Ford. You know, God, is that he had to be in the plan. Gasoline was more water than it was gas. They had 2-3 jugs of gasoline in the back of that old car. And we traveled clear across the state, coming, and we got up as far as All Galley, Florida. You know where All Galley is? Right up there where that thing goes up at. That, where the, what's his name, goes up. You just come on, just come back down. You know what I'm saying. Yeah, just outside of Melbourne.
Yeah.
Just outside of Melbourne. Our Galley was one of the little small subways that they were just trying to get people to buy in. And these guys, we were sitting there on the top of a rock where there was a big silver well. That water was real stinking, but it was cool, real cool. It tastes good, that silver water beer. Anyway, they come around the corner up there, because his little car was parked there. They seen us and stopped and talked. And those people put us up. They were the first people that put us up there in All Galley, Florida. And my sister's husband had to go back to Chiefland because he was worried about his family.
Right.
You know, he got back to Rosewood. He got back to Rosewood and lost his eyesight, both eyes. So he never did get back to her. And he couldn't see. We finally seen him. He finally came down here to Rivera. We finally seen him when he found out where Smoes was. Anyway, when he came on, now she got married again to some guy that was working on the railroad. And that's how come we got from Galley to the Palm Beaches. He was working on the railroad, you know, every time they get too far from the job, they keep moving your head so you can go home instead of going back home.
Right.
And every time when we got to the waterway, the Jupiter waterway up there, and they finished up that waterway, of course, Mr. Flagler, he had his track across, you know, but nobody else could go across, just one track. It wasn't no double track. It's just that one track, cause he's coming in going to Palm Beach. They was building up Palm Beach like everything. And when they got to the waterway, then they had to transfer us across that waterway. We got to Kelsey City, Florida. That first little street way up there in Kelsey City. It's Lake Park now. They call it Lake Park, Florida. But when we got here, and we had got our house straightened up and everything, and then right back in that area from there. When I tell people this, they don't believe it, because right now we're working with the history of it, of Rivera Beach. And there was pineapples from the railroad clear across the Palm Beach Boulevard up there.
Huh.
That's right, nothing but pineapples. Pineapples, and of course it was fits down, and the man that was over us there, the boss man, said, all the pineapples come through the fits, belong to you. And we ate so many pineapples.
So just fields of
Yeah.
pineapples.
Yeah, it just feels them, and you know when they start getting ripe, they smell so good.
Mm-hmm.
They really smell good. So then we finally got out of the section houses because they had to keep going. See, there's a Lake Worth waterway going in. That one was going in, so my sister and her husband had to keep moving, so that meant me, my grandmother, and my younger sister had to stay in Rivera.
Mm.
And would you believe our eyes, we were here about 2 months, because we hadn't gotten around trying to find something to put in the house, a box or something. And somebody had given us a stove. We had the old wood stoves back in there, so you could open a can of pork and beans or something. Anyway, when we were here, we wasn't here more than 2 months, so decided to go down. We were up on the hill in the mill quarters, but you could look straight down. The mill coming down that hill was Rivera Beach, because there was a ditch there that separated Rivera from Kelsey City. It was a long ditch there. And they had a bridge cross there, and of course all the mill quarters were over here. And the Hearst Chapel AME Church, they had built that church right there on that side of the ditch. So we went to church. And would you believe our daddy was there? We didn't even know he was nowhere. We didn't know where he was. Hadn't seen him or tell him. And walked into church that Sunday. And there was our father.
In addition to documentary archaeology, the Virtual Rosewood Research Project is exploring virtual archaeology. This is the use of virtual reality and archaeological research to reconstruct past landscapes. The virtual world environment being created as part of the Virtual Rosewood Research Project will form the background for a longer digital documentary currently being created. You can follow this aspect of the project by visiting www.virtualrosewood.com.